This red dawn over the River Teme valley is very beautiful, but warns of impending rain. Through the drifting mists, the farm life and diurnal wildlife is beginning to stir, while the web spinners and other nocturnal hunters are retreating from the sunshine and seeking their daytime hideaways. Nearer to the river itself, hunters of another kind are preparing for their day. These are barbel hunters. Myself, Andy Orme, and my wife Jill. The venue is the Haven Fishery near Worcester, a tranquil and secluded stretch of water with fast glides, deep gullies and many overhanging alders and willows. This is an ideal habitat for barbel. Now a site of special scientific interest, is a wonderful river that abounds with wildlife both within the water itself and on the riverbanks. During this early summer period, the river and its valley are a picture of lush and colourful foliage. In the dawn light, bankside plants like these comfreys and poppies have opened their petals and are already alive with busy pollen gatherers. While other, more voracious insects are preparing to catch and devour more active prey. These damselflies, for example, although remarkably beautiful, are very active predators. The barbel hunters are now ready, and we are on our way to seek the fishes of the river. preferred habitat of these lovely River Teme barbel can be clearly seen. This consists of a moderate flow of water, a gravel bottom strewn with boulders, and close proximity to shelter, in this case a partially submerged tree. Such sanctuaries form vital fish holding areas on the Teme, but unfortunately, through thoughtlessness and ignorance, many such features are removed, with catastrophic consequences on the fish populations in the immediate vicinity of this work. While I've been totally absorbed by my fish watching, Jill has set up her tackle, introduced a bed of flavoured hemp, and is already into her first fish of the day.
Quite a nice fish, not to fight it particularly hard, not like most Teme barbel do. Nonetheless, it's still quite a nice fish. Looks in nice condition as well. Mind you, there should be this time of year.
See how easy it is to remove the barbless hook with forceps. This particular fish's mouth shows the redness of inflammation, so a quick dab of antiseptic is applied before it is slipped back into the river, just as the first raindrops of the morning start to fall. Jill's chosen swim is a long gravel-lined gully, about 4 feet deep and flanked by sunken branches. This is a well-known holding area on the Haven Fishery, and so long as very strong tackle is used, catches of a dozen or more barbel are not uncommon from it. Jill likes to hold the rod and line and combine touch ledgering with watching the quiver tips. Here you can see how the line lies over her index finger in the so-called trigger style. She is also gripping the carbon cork handle of her Sear barbel quiver rod. This enhances the tactile information she receives. Time for a quick change of hook bait. Today, because it's early in the fishing season, ordinary sweet corn is still catching fish, and here 3 pieces are impaled on a size 6 hook.
a little bit more hemp in. I think I'd rather put hemp in sort of little and often.
Jill's fast reflexes were needed here, as a fish took just after she'd used the catapult.
It feels a bit better fish, this one, a bit better than the last one. Not fighting particularly hard. Trouble is, I find it a bit awkward with these nets in fast water. It's definitely a bit bigger than the last one.
What a lovely barbel. Makes it all worthwhile when you see a fish like that. It's virtually perfect.
While Jill tends to the fish, it's worth looking at her rig. 12-pound mono mainline, a 10-pound braid trace, John Roberts anti-tangle boom and 2 bombs. The 2 weights help anchor the hook bait right over the bed of feed. While this barbel rejoins its companions, another is temporarily leaving them. This time it's my turn, and another beautiful, darkly pigmented team fish is engulfed in the net, admired for a short while, and then held in the landing net to recover its strength. My rig is quite similar to Jill's, but instead of a boom, I use a John Roberts soft ledger stop and leave a minimum of a few inches between the stop and the trace swivel. This prevents tangling. These excellent stops do not damage the line and also permit easy adjustment of the trail length between the hook and ledger. A link swivel is always useful because I usually rove a number of swims, and each may require a different size of ledger. Lastly, a strong swivel and knots, mine are grinners, complete this very simple but reliable setup. Today, I'm presenting ordinary, unflavoured chopped ham with pork on a super strong barbless barbel hook. The point is always left well clear of the bait to help penetration on striking. It's time for release back into the river. The other fish are still very active, and so I'm introducing some free samples to encourage them onto the meat. Meat like this is a very light bait, and it will drift many yards downstream to the waiting barbel. Recasting, it's worth taking a look at the features of this excellent swim, notably the many overhanging and semi-submerged willows that line the bank. This is home to the barbel, but my strong tackle is absolutely vital to get them out of it. In addition to watching the rod tip and holding the rod and line, I like to keep an eye on the line where it enters the river. Movement here can provide the earliest indication of a take. I also can't help keeping an eye out for the wildlife, like this amazing little owl. I reckon he can't believe that I've chucked all that good food into the river. He certainly seems hopping mad about something. Perhaps he hopes that Jill will give him some grub. Jill has steadily been feeding hemp and corn, and now her gully swim is both lined with bait and also lined with feeding barbel. She doesn't have to wait long for her next fish.
The difference in bites, sometimes you can have little taps and they won't really take, and then all of a sudden, woof, they'll take the bait. Well, he's not the hugest of fish, but he'll do. Hooked right in the corner, easily unhooked. There you go, little fella.
Although the earlier light shower came to nothing, heavier rain seems imminent, and not having brought my brolly, I've had to grab waterproofs from the car. My perseverance in the rain has paid off though, because this is a pretty big team fish. I think I've got every right to look happy with this one, but she needs a good rest in the landing net before I release her back into the river. Playing that last big barbel disturbed the swim, and so on this cast I'm placing a bait further downstream, right next to the submerged jumble of willow branches. With my bait in a brilliant position like that, I'm ever alert for bites because a take can be expected at any time. The bite came, and I missed it, but with the sun breaking through the rain clouds, the Teme Valley was soon bathed in light, and the rest of the day proved to be both hot and very rewarding. As the pollen gatherers resumed their quest, I decided to discard my waterproofs and rove the river. In this instance, I really wished that I'd remembered to pack a wire trace and a rapala. While the pike drifted away in its search for a juicy roach, I set off in search for a good barbel swim. This spot looked very promising, extensively overhung by trees, and with a fallen willow actually in the river. Perfect place for barbel to hide. Although I couldn't spot any individual fish, there was evidence of recent barbel activity. This freshly dug hole in the gravel was almost certainly made by a scavenging barbel. While I waited patiently for a fish, Jill started her own travels, leaving most of her gear in the original swim. As she prepared to fish, she was probably totally unaware of the many pairs of eyes watching her every move. These beautiful male damselflies are the bankside bandits of the river. There is great competition for the best ambush points from which they launch their attacks on their prey. This consists of smaller flying insects. When a male secures a prime position, he is often harassed by the others as they try to dislodge him and steal his place. If he launches himself at a fly, he may well catch a meal, but will lose his vantage point and have to find another. Food certainly isn't the only thing on the minds of these males. This is a beautiful female of the species, and it isn't long before a suitor finds her. He grasps her behind the head, and she reaches forward to clasp him with her abdomen. Once fertilised, the female damselflies alight on the surface of the water, right next to floating weed. You can just make out in the background of this shot a female with which is on the surface, and she actually drags herself underwater where she lays her eggs. While this male waits patiently for either a meal or a mate, Jill is waiting for a take. I had no bites in that last swim, and so I'm on my travels again. This particular swim has some good features, like this tree on the far bank. Its trunk and roots jut out into the river and probably form a perfect holding area for the barbel. Also, just downstream of this spot, the main flow of the river abruptly cuts across and forms a fast gully under the overhanging trees and bushes. This is another area where it would be well worth placing some baits. That is, if someone hadn't got there first. While I've been studying the river, Jill has quietly moved to swim and is now hidden in the reeds watching her quiver tip and feeding a few free morsels of meat into the gully. Jill has placed her rig very precisely next to an overhanging alder bush. She doesn't have long to wait for her next bite, and this time her strike connects with a fish. This unfortunate barbel bears some old scars, which I'm afraid to say have probably been caused by poor handling by an angler, and possibly the use of a very old-fashioned, coarse-meshed landing net. You can see that the dorsal and pelvic fins are split, but because they have healed over, there is no real point in applying any antiseptic creams in this case. After that fish was quickly released, Jill introduces some free offerings in the hope of encouraging some more fish to feed in this lovely swim. With the day getting ever warmer, I've decided to return to the car to change clothes and pick up more bait. On the way, I can't resist a spot of fish watching, and also the chance to study more of the Teme Valley's incredible wildlife. There is a fascinating, but often ignored, world within the vegetation bordering the river and the paths used by anglers. This mass of hungry caterpillars, for example, are making short work of the nettles and will soon pupate on their way to becoming beautiful butterflies. Plants are not only a source of food but also cover, and many creatures are so well camouflaged that it takes a few minutes of intense study to spot them. The little owl has now found a new hideaway, this time in a bankside alder, which overhangs the river and also provides cover for a shoal of feeding barbel. You can see the clean gravel that they have disturbed. Having slipped into something a little more comfortable, I now want to work out a strategy to catch these barbel. I don't want to hook them too near to their snaggy home, because the chances of actually landing them will be slim. It will be far better to lure them about 30 or 40 yards upriver onto a clean gravel patch where I'll have some space to play them when hooked. In early summer, when the rivers are quite low and the weather is hot and sunny, it takes a lot to beat a tried and tested combination of corn and hemp. Jill and I have been using ordinary corn, but have added our own flavours to the hemp to increase the chances of drawing the fish and making them feed. No fish have moved up yet, and so I'm continuing with the feeding process, putting a total of about a pint of hemp and about a quarter of a pint of corn into the swim. While I leave to get my tackle, I have every confidence that my bait will draw the fish, and soon they do in fact start to arrive. feeding barbel is a fantastic sight for any whiskers fanatic, but I'm a bit concerned about the presence of a pike in the swim. However, I seem to be more worried than the barbel, who just swim straight past it and start hoovering up the corn and hemp. The shoal is still a little spooky, and so I'm going to delay fishing for a while to allow them to gain in confidence. There can be no doubt that that is a feeding frenzy. I reckon it's time to stop watching this incredible spectacle and to actually catch a few fish. Needless to say, with barbel feeding this crazily, I'm into one almost immediately. Catching that small fish from such a shallow swim panicked the shoal, and so after putting some more feed into the river, a rest period is needed to encourage them to return. Right, I'm going to give the swim a bit of a rest now, keep an eye on these fantastic fish, but basically show you the essential kit that I take roving with me. This is all you need to catch plenty of lovely barbel. Rod and reel, landing net, unhooking mat, towel, bait, silly hat, shades, multi-purpose knife, forceps, some gear to look after the fish, some antiseptic creams, good strong hooks, which I either use barbless or squeeze down the barbs. A hook sharpener, essential here because quite often you get the point of the hook burred on the rocks and stones. Some traces, hefty line, John Roberts soft ledger stops, a range of ledgers, some link ledgers and some swivels. That's all you need. The towel, the bait, the unhooking mat I tend to carry around in the landing net. All the rest of the gear goes in my waistcoat. I tend to leave chair, wellies, waterproof clothes, the seat if I want one, back in the car, and things like food, weighing scales, photographic equipment and the like. I certainly don't want to lug that sort of stuff around the river.
There's nothing quite like a group of hungry barbel to interrupt a spot of narration. The shoal is back and is feeding with a vengeance. Although most of the fish are of small to medium size, a large double has put in an appearance and is scoffing hemp right under my rod tip. Unfortunately, I don't have a bait in the water, and I daren't move a muscle for fear of scaring her off. Only after she drifts away will I dare to recast a bait back into the river.
That is an amazing sight. In over 30 years of barbel fishing, I must admit I've never seen anything like it. They are going crazy. It's 3 or 4 weeks into the season now. And they've seen a lot of ordinary hemp, a lot of ordinary meat, a lot of ordinary corn. So we've started to include 1 or 2 additives just to ring the changes. Certainly the stuff we've put in the hemp today has had a remarkable effect. We should be using a lot more of that in the future. There are so many fish in the swim that could possibly pose a problem. I'm likely to get a lot of line bites. Therefore it is essential not to hit the little taps and tweaks, which I'm getting all the time. In a situation like this where you've got a load of fish, you have to wait for a very firm pull.
These fish are no mugs. 12-pound main line, 10-pound trace. It's not light gear, size 8 hook. Even though they're feeding like crazy, I'm being very wary about taking the hook bait. However, it would be madness to scale down. These fish fight like tigers. Anyone who's caught a team barbel will tell you. These fish don't take prisoners.
Right on cue, one of the team tigers advances upriver, takes my corn, and then scoots all over the swim as it tries to escape on a tight line. The other fish in the shoal didn't stay to watch the proceedings. Although totally outgunned by my heavy tackle, this barbel just won't give up. But finally, I do manage to guide him into the net, just as a pike arrives to investigate the source of all this commotion. Here, the original sequence is slowed to 30% speed and ring indicates the position of the bait. You can see the fish take, bolt off with the bait, my line tighten on the strike, and the barbel start to fight as its companions exit into the sunken tree. It's obvious from the speed and determination of this fish that light tackle would have been smashed in an instant.
Magic hemp's cord trawl. The feature of this rod is its carbon handle. This means that I can feel absolutely every vibration which comes down that carbon rod back. I've also got the line over my fingers in what's called the trigger style, so I can feel what's coming down that as well. Like that, I'm getting all sorts of little twitches. The rod I'm using today, which I use for just about all of my roving, is our Sear Specialist Rover. It's got a lovely action, sensitive tip, power in the butt. I quite happily put 10 or 12 pound line through it. But then again, you can use it for about 4 pound line after chub. It's light, well balanced, responsive. The sort of rod you can hold all day. One of the features is that you can take the tip ring off, put a quiver tip on. That saves carting around a whole spare rod top, which is a right pain if you're roving about on a river. Jill and I have had a great day. We've both had a lot of barbel, some good fish, a lot of fun. We've had some losses, I'm afraid. Some hook pull-outs. One of my fish snapped the trace, but I just had to try and stop it from getting into a sunken tree over there. If it had got it in, £50 line wouldn't have got it out, so I had to clamp down. It made mincemeat a £10 line. Barbless hook though, so it should drop out. If you're fishing hard up to snags, 12 or £16 line is probably advisable, because even the smallish fish of £5, £6, their first initial rush is just so powerful they take maybe a yard of line. In some swims you just have to hit the bite and walk backwards. Actually reeling in is a luxury you don't have time for. How do I miss bites like that?
Unfortunately, it's very nearly time to make the journey home. Jill returned to her swim below the rapids and landed a great fish. Such beautiful, wild river barbel represent a fascinating challenge to any angler. That fish was the perfect ending to a great day. The poppies are now closing. The little owl is preparing to catch and devour his evening meal. And the sun is setting over the lovely Teme and its inhabitants. May they all remain where they belong in the river.